Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Drones and 911. Are you ready for this? This training is brought to you by Commercial Electronics. If you'd like to learn more about our recording solution and third-party quality assurance services, visit comelectronics.com. This webinar is part of our public safety education series, and you can view our upcoming webinars on our training page at comelectronics.com/training. Now, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's event. Here you see a screenshot of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop. If you're listening in using your computer speaker system, you're automatically muted to eliminate background noise. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select the handset in the audio pane at the bottom right, and the dial-in information will be displayed. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions about today's lesson by typing your questions into the Q&A pane of the control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and I will address them during the Q&A session at the end. The best time to send in your questions is when you think of them, so send those in as soon as you think of them. Now, once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate it if you'd complete that. Let us know how we did so we can continue to provide you with relevant content. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. And for those of you wanting to report this training to your state certification or licensing agency, send an email to training@comelectronics.com. I am Beth English. I'm your instructor today. I began my career as a police dispatcher 32 years ago. I was very young, and most recently served as communications director before joining Commercial Electronics as the program manager for their QA program and higher ground instructor. I have my master's telecommunicator license from Texas. I'm a TCOL instructor and a past president of Texas NENA. So let's get started with our session. But before we start, let me ask how many of you have already taken a call about a drone? Okay, if you will answer the poll, you can answer yes or no. If you've already taken a call from a citizen about a drone sighting. Oh, wow. Lots of you have taken calls. Interesting. Okay, so let's get back to our lesson here. Okay, so what is a drone? We all know what drones are, but today we're going to talk about the drones and their impact on public safety as a whole, and what you, as a 911 telecommunicator, should do if or when you receive a call about a drone. Now, for those of you who have already taken calls about drones, if you have any other helpful hints or tips, send them to me in the Q&A section, and let me know if you have anything else that I'm not going to cover. So, like I said, we all know what drones are, but in terms of reporting issues to the FAA, what are they? They're known as unmanned aircraft or small unmanned aircraft. And those that include the associated elements are known as small unmanned aircraft systems. And these include the communication links, the components that control a small UA that are required for safe and efficient operation in the NAS or the National Airspace System. So let's talk about the history of drones. They've been around a lot longer than you would imagine, beginning in 1907 with the first quadcopter that was invented by a couple of brothers that were inventors. It required 4 men to steady it, and it only lifted about 2 feet off the ground. In 1917, the Ruston-Proctor aerial target was intended to be used as a flying bomb, but it was never used in combat. In 1943, the Fritz X was the first remote-controlled weapon put into use. It carried a 2,300-pound bomb that was used to sink ships during combat. In the 60s, we had the first remote-controlled plane boom that used transistor technology. For years, you could drive anywhere in the country and see groups out flying their remote-controlled planes on the weekends. It ended up becoming a huge family pastime. And then in 2001, the CIA began flying drones over Afghanistan. Now, the first post-9/11 drone-based kill was in February 2002, and that was when a drone was used to kill a man who was thought to be Osama bin Laden, but it wasn't. Now, in 2006, the FAA issued commercial drone permits, and that paved the way for use of drones for recreational purposes and opened up opportunities for companies and professionals who wanted to use drones in business ventures. In 2010, we saw the first ready-to-fly drone that could be controlled by using a smartphone. In 2013, Amazon started looking at drone-based delivery, but this is going to require some federal regulation changes. For example, line of sight, and we'll get into that shortly. Now, in 2015, we had the Lily camera drone disaster. So people noticed that in their pictures, they were on vacation, in their pictures, there was always someone missing. So the Lily was invented to be used as a camera drone, and the user would keep a device in their pocket that allowed the Lily to follow them wherever they went. So, and that way everybody could be in the picture. The company received over 60,000 prepaid orders for the device, but they weren't able to manufacture it to meet the demand. Eventually, the company had to refund customers and filed bankruptcy. And then in 2016, the DJI Phantom 4 became a milestone for drone photography and consumer drones in general. Now, first and foremost, as far as regulations for flying drones, drones must be registered with the FAA. Anything weighing over 0.55 pounds must be registered, and the aircraft must be marked on the outside with the registration number or what's called the N number. Also, the operator has to carry proof of registration when they're flying. Now, there are different classes of airspace that are identified by the FAA, and UAs cannot fly above 400 feet in Class G airspace or airspace where the FAA is not controlling manned aircraft. Most drones and mobile apps have guidelines to help identify the appropriate airspace and height. And to view laws that are pertaining to UAs by state, you can go to this website or you can go to FAA.gov. Although this website is a whole lot easier to navigate to find them. Now, you can also, on this website that I just showed you, you can look at the laws by state. And this is just a sample of what is on there. It's got every state on there. I just clipped this small sample out of it. But you can see where, for instance, Alabama doesn't have any state laws regarding the use. And you can see down here, Florida's got several different laws. There were still more states that didn't have any laws yet, and there were some states that had numerous laws on the books regarding the drone usage. Now, with drones, just as with anything else that comes along that's cool, people have found a way to exploit it for nefarious purposes, and the drone is no exception. Apparently the camera capabilities were just too hard for the criminals to resist. So we're going to go over some of the ways that drones are being used illegally. Okay, they're being used in terrorism. So just as in war, they're being used in terrorism, from filming propaganda videos, scouting out enemy positions, and being used to deliver weapons of mass destruction. But weaponizing drones is not just a threat overseas. Not too long ago, there was an 18-year-old from Connecticut who mounted a handgun to a drone and posted a YouTube video of himself firing a gun into the woods. Now, in that particular case, he was actually just firing the gun into the woods, but he was testing his drone to see what could be done with it. So weaponizing a drone is not just going to be for use overseas. Drones are also being used to deliver contraband into prison yards, such as drugs, weapons, pornography, cell phones, etc. And sometimes the contraband is being delivered directly to the prisoners' windows. They're also being used for surveillance, like tracking guard changes or taking pictures of the prison grounds in order to gather data needed to formulate escape plans. Now, in this video, you can see a drug drop. This is taking place at night at a prison in London. You can barely see the drone at one spot in the video, but you can see the bag of drugs that also contains a cell phone as the pilot is swinging it towards the window. And you can see the prisoner reaching out with a stick trying to catch it. And then in another video that shows up right after this, you'll see the contraband being lifted up the side of the prison. Just after this, you can see the contraband being lifted up. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Let's attempt to go to the next one. Okay. There we go. All right. Now, in the past, prisoners have had to smuggle contraband into the prisons by use of guards who could be paid. Now, with the availability of drones commercially, criminals don't have to get near the prison to drop in cell phones or drugs or even weapons. In this video, you can see the prisoner is watching the drone and is waiting for the contraband to drop. Well, he tripped over his little cornhole. But you can see in this video how they're getting drugs now into prisons going over the walls, where before that hasn't been a problem because of the height of the walls, the barbed wire, etc. Now, drones are supposed to be flown at or below 400 feet, and unless the traffic control center is contacted, it's illegal to fly a drone within 5 miles of an airport. And these laws are set for very practical reasons such as if a drone were to get sucked into a 747 engine, it could end in tragedy. In this video, and watch this be the one not play. Okay, there we go. You can see what one study showed would happen to the engine if it were hit by a drone. The speed of the debris from the drone thrashing around inside the engine can reach up to 715 miles per hour. The broken blades also create more fragments as the fan is destroyed, contributing to the catastrophic engine failure. So another issue is drones flying too closely to manned aircraft. According to the FAA, to reports from January 1st through December 31st, 2019, there were 2,156 reported incidents in which drones were flying too close to manned aircraft. So the incidents were sometimes taken to a scary level when manned aircraft had to be knocked off course or forced to take evasive action to avoid hitting a drone while flying, even at cruising altitudes. Videos are just fighting with me today. Now, this video highlights the absolute cluelessness of some drone pilots, which is why many of these incidents occur. The drone pilot in this video says that he has no idea he was so close to an airport, even though he saw one plane pass about 100 feet in front of him, flying really low. So this particular video was taken in Tel Aviv, but you can see, in spite of regulations restricting the use of UAS in areas around or near airports, it still happens frequently. And so in this video, he says he didn't know he was there by an airport, even though he saw that plane fly by. So he continues to fly, and this happens. So he continues to fly in the airspace by the airport, and another airplane comes by that almost hits him. Now, the question of what constitutes illegal drone surveillance is something countries around the world are grappling with. The FAA guidelines specify that drones should not be flown over people, stadiums, or large crowds. But drone pilots could also get in trouble for flying over private property where the owners have a reasonable expectation of privacy. In 2014, California passed a paparazzi drone law to try to protect celebrity children. Kanye West actually decided to take it a little further, and he got some trained eagles to protect against the paparazzi drones. And even though that sounds a little bit out there, police in the Netherlands are also training eagles to take out drones. Now, illegal drone surveillance can be on an individual level, like drones flying over celebrity property, but it also happens on a large scale. Sports stadiums have struggled to find solutions to drones hovering over games and taking illegal video footage, and movie studios are having to deal with drones flown by fans trying to predict the plot of the upcoming production. The Star Wars franchise, for instance, had a team equipped with counter drones to, quote unquote, remove the unwanted drones so the public cannot film the set or get access to footage and plot spoilers before the films were released. Now, one of the regulations regarding drones is that it is considered an aircraft, and there is a law against making aircraft crash or destroying aircraft in the sky, etc. So as far as how the Star Wars franchise removed the unwanted drones, I don't know. They didn't say, and it's probably best that they not. Now, one of the ways that drones are being used illegally is to interfere with public safety and first responders. During the California wildfires, firefighting aircraft had to be grounded because of drones in the area taking video of the fires. The firefighting aircraft, such as tankers and helicopters, fly at very low altitudes, sharing the same airspace as drones. So when drones are spotted over wildfires, the aerial firefighting operations have to cease until the airspace is cleared and it's safe again for the pilots. Well, this causes fires to become larger and more expensive, but the potential for accidents is too great to continue with the aerial firefighting. So ceasing operations due to drones in the area also places lives and property in harm's way. Incredibly, most people wouldn't stop a fire engine from responding to a fire, but they don't think twice about flying drones over wildfires, eventually stopping the pilots from doing their jobs. Now, Congress has since authorized the FAA to impose a fine not to exceed $20,000 for anyone who operates a drone and deliberately or recklessly interferes with wildfire suppression, law enforcement, or any emergency response efforts. In 2017, an FBI hostage rescue team was set up outside of a large city at an elevated observation post to assess a hostage situation. While they were there, they heard the buzz of small drones, and before they knew it, the drones were all around them doing high-speed, low passes at the agents in order to flush them out. Of course, the FBI lost all situational awareness of the target, and not only did the group swarm the agents, but they kept an eye on them and then fed the video to their group's other members on YouTube. And that's just one way criminal organizations are using drones. They're also being used to intimidate witnesses, surveil police departments to see who's going in and out and who might be cooperating with the police. They're being used in robberies and burglaries to observe target facilities, looking for security gaps and to determine patterns like where the security guards go and when. Gangs are also monitoring port authority workers. So if they see someone getting too close to a container that houses illegal substances or contraband, they'll create a diversion by calling in a fire or a theft or some other false alarm to draw security away. And then, of course, there are the borders. Previously, human scouts would come across the border and station themselves on various mountaintops near the border, and then they would radio down to their counterparts about gaps in border patrol. Well, they don't have to send humans across anymore. Now they're using drones. And so the drones and the drone surveillance allows the cartels to move small amounts of high-value narcotics across the border with little or no fear of arrest. So what does this mean for law enforcement? Well, governance hasn't caught up with the number of ways that drones can and will be used. So even so, all pilots are supposed to follow regulations and minimum standards, and they cannot endanger the life or property of another. So when a report is received from a citizen about a drone doing something quote unquote illegal, law enforcement is in the best position to identify the potential witnesses and conduct the initial interviews and document what they observe. So in the case of unauthorized use, FAA inspectors will want to re-interview witnesses, especially since some jurisdictions prohibit the transmission of witness statements to third parties. So the identification of unauthorized users is critical on our end because the FAA bears the burden of proof in enforcement proceedings. So getting as much information as possible for law enforcement to identify these subjects is a critical part of our jobs. Now, any pictures taken in close proximity to the event are helpful in describing light and weather conditions, any damage or injuries, density of the people on the surface, especially at public events or densely populated areas. Landmarks noticed can also help determine the location and the height of the unauthorized aircraft. Timely collection of any video or photographic evidence from nearby security systems is going to be essential to any investigation. Since some of these systems erase data as the system recycles, this evidence has to be collected immediately to keep from losing that information. And then presence or lack of identification numbers on the UA, and that's the N numbers that I was telling you about, those are significant to an FAA investigation. So you may have someone say that they're conducting an approved commercial operation, which requires a registered aircraft, but the absence of registration markings may indicate that the operation is unauthorized. So N numbers can be verified on the FAA's website at faa.gov. And then registered owners of UAs over 0.55 pounds must be marked with a registration number, and the operator must provide evidence of registration upon request by law enforcement. Now, the FAA maintains a variety of security-driven airspace restrictions around the country to help protect sensitive locations, events, and activities through TFRs or temporary flight restrictions. So law enforcement agencies should become familiar with these restricted areas within their jurisdiction. If there are any questions about whether a TFR has been established in your area, you can contact the nearest air traffic facility, or you can visit this website. In this website, it will be available to you in the recording of this session that's sent to you. So when you look up a TFR, this is, I had to break it down into 3 different pages because it's a very long page. But in this page, you can see, and I will show you. So I did this one on February 25th, and the location is Charleston, South Carolina. And you see the reason here is temporary flight restrictions for VIP movement. This was actually done the day of the Democratic debates in South Carolina. So this is what pulled up, and it tells you the affected areas. And remember, I told you there's airspace G. There's airspace A, B, C, D, E, and G. And this shows you a map of the airspace, gives you lat and long, gives you all this information. The next page gives you the operating restrictions and requirements. And so all of this tells you the restrictions and the requirements for that TFR. And then this is the bottom of it. This gives the authority, so who's actually calling this TFR. And because it's regional, this is the region that it's coming from. And then this is more information that was at the bottom of the website. So you can go to that website that I put on here and look to see if there are any temporary flight restrictions in your area. Now, you have regional operation centers for reporting incidents to the FAA. And if you have an unauthorized use report, then that has to be immediately given to one of these regional operation centers, or ROCs. And immediate notification is valuable to timely initiation of an FAA investigation. So the ROCs are manned 24/7, and this is a picture of a card right here that is actually part of the law enforcement toolkit or public safety toolkit. And these are also listed on the FAA website. So if you don't already have the information for the FAA ROC for your region, then this might be something that you want to download and post, add it into your phone systems as a number to call, just to make sure that you have it. Because if you haven't already gotten a call, you're going to get a call. So, and you can see down here, it shows you what states are handled by which ROC. So, and which number to call, which website, everything that you need to know as far as calling. So, what does all of this mean for telecommunicators? Well, I'll tell you, there isn't a lot of information published that tells what to do when receiving calls about drones. However, seeing what the FAA is counting on law enforcement collecting for their reports, we can see how our questioning of the caller is very important. And as I stated before, the unauthorized use of drones is prevalent. And one day you will receive a call about a drone spying on someone, stalking someone, or some other criminal activity. So just as with anything else, getting the location is essential. But now we need to get even more than just the location. So if the caller is able to see the drone, we need to specifically ask them to look for the registration number. Also, if there's any landmarks nearby, the distance and the height of the drone can be determined by its positioning to the landmark. If your caller is near an airport, ask how close they are. Remember, airports have at least a 5-mile restriction area around them. Have the caller look for the operator by looking at rooftops, balconies, and windows. Most of the time, they won't be able to see the operator, but if they can, then obviously we need a complete description and their location. Ask if there are any security cameras in the area that might be capturing the drone, and if so, find out where those cameras are located. Even better, if the caller can take a picture of the drone with their cell phone, then see if they can get a picture of the registration number. We need a description of the device, whether it's fixed wing, multi-rotor, the size, shape, color, and what it might be carrying, if anything. Now, we don't want to ever tell the caller to approach the suspect. If they can see the suspect or the person operating the drone, we don't want to tell them to approach them. Although most pilots are just using their drones for recreational purposes, you've seen how criminals are using them now, and you don't know who the caller may encounter. Should you get a call from someone wanting to know what they need to do to fly their drone, you can direct them to the FAA website for all the information they need. Now, the website does have it all, but Some of it is very difficult to find. I actually had more luck with Google directing me to the correct place on the website than I did searching the website itself. And you will probably get calls from people saying, I want to fly my new drone today. What do I need to do? Or do you have any rules against it here, or things like that? So you want to be prepared with where to direct them and what they need to look for. Now, let me ask another question. Are you familiar with the laws in your state regarding unmanned aircraft, or UAs? Okay. Some of you are. Most of you aren't. Okay. So once you get the link to this, like I said, the website's in there. You can look on the website, find your state, and figure out what the laws are in your area as far as drones. Now, one more question. Has your agency used a drone to assist in law enforcement, firefighting, or search and rescue? Okay, got a couple of yeses. Got a lot of yeses. That's awesome. Okay. So let's talk about that. We'll talk about law enforcement use. Now, although unauthorized use of drones is on the rise, so is the use by public safety agencies. Law enforcement is already using drones for such things as accident reconstruction, to investigate active shooter situations, crime scene analysis, surveillance, and crowd monitoring. And a lot of the public disagrees with law enforcement using drones because of the lack of what they consider their privacy or the ability to be surveilled without their knowledge. When given information about exactly how law enforcement is using the drones to help prevent incidents and to help track criminals, a lot of people have decided that, yes, they are okay with law enforcement using the drones. On the other hand, almost nobody has a problem with firefighting using drones. But that's because drones are being used in firefighting efforts by surveying burning buildings, locating people trapped in fires, finding people trapped in avalanches, finding hot spots both during and after extinguishment operations. And they can provide a real-time overview of the spread of wildland fires and the potential harm to firefighters, the public, and the surrounding communities. Drones have also been used to survey damage caused by natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, and hurricanes. And the early information that they are able to gather with the drones helps determine what additional resources may be needed from mutual aid and or from FEMA. In medical operations, drones have been used by some agencies to deliver AEDs to the site of medical emergencies, saving time and lives. So just imagine, if someone went down in front of you and needed an AED, you wouldn't have to tell someone to go find an AED. It would just be delivered right next to you on the sidewalk. Drones are also being considered in the delivery of organs for transplant, which I think is just beyond cool. So instead of waiting for a team to get together on an airplane or a helicopter, They strap the container to a drone, and if you've ever seen steel magnolias, they put it in a beer cooler, and it's off within moments of the organ being retrieved. Think of the number of lives that can be saved with that. Now, one thing to note is that just because a drone is being used by a public safety agency, it doesn't mean that all regulations are disregarded. Regulations in place in restricted flight zones, over major events, and in heavily populated areas require public safety to obtain special waivers to operate UAs in those areas. Generally, that's not going to be a problem if they're used for public safety reasons, but it is not a given that the waiver will be approved. Now, before we get to questions, I do want to let you know to tune in same bat time, same bat channel next month for our session on Radio 101, what telecommunicators need to know about land mobile radio. So this session will provide insight to the history of land mobile radio, or LMR, and the basic network configurations and the important role that APCO has played in the evolution of LMR. So let's get to our Q&A session. If you have a question that you think I can answer, go ahead and send those in. I'll try to answer them. And like I've said before, if I can't, I'll just disconnect you from the webinar. Does anybody that has already taken a call about a drone have any tips for those of us listening? Anything specific that you learned? Okay. Well, I don't have any questions yet, and I don't have any tips yet. So this was a short session, and I can't believe it was, because it took me forever to research all of this. I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes in case anybody wants to send in any questions or send in any tips. And then, again, don't forget to join us next month for our Radio 101 session. If you've ever wondered how your radio system works and what people mean when they're talking about different things on your radio system, like talk groups and channels and things like that, definitely tune in with us, and we'll try to get all of those answered for you too. Brian Hughes will be presenting that webinar. And then keep an eye on our schedule, because we do have some really good sessions coming up in the next few months. And let me remind you, and thank you for joining us. This presentation has been made possible by Commercial Electronics, provider of public safety solutions, including Higher Ground Next Generation 911 Recording, CQIP Third-Party Quality Assurance Program, and Carbine 911 Next Generation Call Handling Platform. Have a great day.